to... Oh, hey, great shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Crack Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On today's show, we've got a jam-packed edition of The Deciding Point as we know what the draw looks like at the 2023 ITA Division I National Indoor Championships. We're going to break down all of the round of 16 women's matchups. We're going to offer predictions for each of those 8 matches. We'll also look at the seeding decisions that were ultimately made by the committee. We'll talk about all the past results we've seen over the last week, how they impact how we look at each of these matchups approaching. Just more broadly, it's going to be a phenomenal edition of the show. I've done 6 podcasts already today. This is the one I was looking most forward to. We save the best for last. And the reason I feel that way is because I am joined by elite company once again on today's show. Of course, you know him best as the returning champion of returning champions here at Cracked Racquets, founder of the No Ad, No Problem blog and podcast, and co-host of these Deciding Point episodes throughout the course of the 2023 season. It's my dear friend, John J. Parsons. Jay, hey, great shot. Welcome back to the show. It's finally upon us. The National Indoors is here. I will see you in Seattle soon, my friend. But how excited are you for this weekend's action?
I am very excited. I feel like the release of the draw made it feel extremely real. Seeing the logos facing the logos, and we're getting brackets. So very excited to break this down and looking forward to seeing you in person in Seattle.
I am looking forward to hugging you, my friend. You know I'm a hugger. We'll do it immediately. And I will say, you talk about that draw being released, it feeling real. We are currently trying to interview all 16 of the head coaches who will be competing this weekend in Seattle. And if you haven't heard or found any of those interviews, you can see them all over on the Cracked Interviews podcast feed or the beautifully redesigned website, crackrackets.com. But in the midst of an interview with Vanderbilt head coach Ellesse Tsubanos, that is when the draw came out. I got her live reaction to everything. It was a fun moment for people to look forward to in what have all been, again, very enjoyable interviews thus far. But yeah, it's real. As I've said in each of the episodes, let's roll the balls out. Let's find out who's good, who's not. What are the strong spots? Who are the MVP candidates? Who is that girl here in this 2023 season? We get to at least take a step closer to all of those answers after this weekend. And again, our plan here on today's show is to run you through all of the round of 16 matchups. Of course, we'll have coverage from first ball to last of these 2023 National Indoor Championships on our Crack Racquets YouTube channel. It starts at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Again, Friday morning, championship on Monday. We'll have it all for you on our Crack Racquets YouTube channel for free. Shout out to the ITA. Shout out to super producer Daniel Westoff, the hardest working man in all of tennis. With that said, before we get into what will be a jam-packed episode filled with previewing, we have to, of course, give a shout out to the people who make these episodes possible, our dear friends at Ellesse and SwingVision. And look, I would be wearing my Ellesse gear right now. It had to be washed. I wore that Ellesse sweatshirt each and every day in Cleveland. It was mistakenly, and I say mistakenly because I'm stupid, you should pack more than one sweatshirt when temperatures are going to be under 10 degrees. It was the only one I had. Thank God I did. It's so comfortable. It's so stylish. As Jay pointed out in episode 1 this year, it makes me look like I have shoulders. So shout out to our friends at Ellesse. We are so happy to have them on the team, proud sponsors of this show. To learn more, just click on the link in the description to these episodes. Of course, a shout out to our returning sponsor, SwingVision, as well. There was a little brouhaha on tennis Twitter about a call that was making the rounds. And yes, that call was outrageous, but I just always think diving into those things is just niche geet. not great. It's just an unkosher place to be. But you know what's going to make those calls obsolete? As soon as SwingVision is on every court in college tennis, because SwingVision's artificial intelligence technology makes automated line calling possible. It also, when you use it in practice sessions, will just make your life easier. It'll show you the makes. It'll show you the misses. It'll break down each stroke by category. Again, SwingVision can do all of these things all within one app. Download it today. Learn more by clicking on the link in the description to your podcast. Of course, use our promo code CRACK20 when you do sign up. Shout out to our friends at Ellesse and SwingVision, proud sponsors of The Deciding Point. With that said, Jay, let's start big picture. Look at the draw. And those of you tuning in live on YouTube, welcome back. We're happy to answer your questions throughout today's show, but we want to start big picture. Just for those who are unfamiliar, how this National Women's Indoor Events differs from the men's, they only seed the top 8. After that, there are intricate rules, right? You can't play someone from your conference. You can't play someone on your schedule. There are different things that go in to creating this draw, but they only seed the top 8. That's the headline fact that I think listeners and fans of college tennis need to know. And ultimately, your top 8 seeds at this year's event, you have number 1 Texas, number 2 North Carolina, number 3 A&M, number 4 Duke, number 5 Stanford, number 6 Ohio State, 7 is Virginia, 8 is Vanderbilt. Jay, I ask you, your biggest qualms with this seeding, what do you think they got right as well?
Well, there were, 2.5 changes here that really impacted the seeding. And the first one was the big mover in Ohio State, right? So Ohio State moves from last week's rankings of 11 all the way up to number 6. That's on the heels of beating Oklahoma State 4-3 and then demolishing Georgia at home 4-0. So they move all the way up to 6. The half is that as a result of that, Georgia moves down, from number 5 all the way outside 8. We don't know if they're 9, 10, 11, but they're outside the top 8. So that was the biggest change that from last week's rankings. The other one that I think has ultimately a big ripple effect is that they flipped Pepperdine and Vanderbilt from last week's rankings. So last week, Pepperdine was 8 this week, and Vanderbilt was 9. Vanderbilt gets seeded 8, Pepperdine 9. That one felt like the qualm that I would have is I'm not sure there's any reason to have flipped Vanderbilt and Pepperdine based off of this last week's result. And I think if you had kept that, right, you wouldn't have had the Pepperdine, North Carolina first round match. One could argue maybe a little bit more even distribution of some of these top teams. Vanderbilt at 8 probably feels like the stretch. I don't have any qualms with moving up Ohio State. Maybe you have a qualm about Georgia moving out of the top 8, but those are the 3 teams that were kind of had impacted by seeding changes.
Well, I think it's worth noting the biggest villain in the seeding committee for the seeding committee this year was Mother Nature. The fact that Pepperdine didn't get to play Cal or Stanford last weekend, if they go even 1-1 in those matches, they're a top 8 seed. And that's the difference, right? Is to some extent. Now, here's my only qualm is there are 2 differing thoughts. Body of work mattered, and I appreciate that from this seeding committee. It would have been outrageous for Ohio State, who has probably the 4 best wins right now in Tennessee, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Georgia, to have not been a top 8 seed. Like their body of work in 2023, put it up against any school. It's the best. And so they had to be a top 8 seed. Totally understand that. Here's the thing. Like, again, who has better wins, Pepperdine or Vanderbilt? Vanderbilt does. Even beyond just NC State. Like, they beat Northwestern as well. This Vanderbilt team, a win over Louisville, a win over Furman. Again, through no fault of their own. And I'm sure Pear and Pete will be like, we're even scheduling January 7th next year because we're never letting this happen to us again. They got screwed by Mother Nature. If you're playing this year's results, I think these seeds are pretty accurate. Here's the thing, though. If you're playing this year's results, Texas probably shouldn't be 1. And, again, that would maybe I get North Carolina too. They do have a good win over Georgia. They're the 3-time defending champs. I think that should matter. But like, again, that would be why I don't have a qualm, is they kind of played this year's results.
I don't think that's true. I think
Okay.
there are a lot of teams that, and this is one of my takeaways from this draw, is there's a lot of teams that are highly seeded in this draw. We have no idea how good they are, right? You know, who has Duke played? Who has Texas A&M played? Who has Virginia played? Those are all top 8 seeds. We're not basing this purely off of results from the season. Pepperdine, yeah, they're 2-0. They've literally only played 2 matches in kickoff weekend, but there needs to be some balance, right? Vanderbilt beating NC State without Schneider. That's a good win. Is it a win that should warrant being a top 8 seed above top 8 seeds prior based on them not losing? I don't think so. I think also Virginia arguably does not deserve the 8 seed as well. So,
Yeah.
you know, there are a lot of teams in here that we haven't seen, doesn't have nearly the resume of an Ohio State, but they still are seeded.
Yeah, if Ohio State would have been the only change, you're right. Maybe that would have made a little bit more sense. But
Yep.
still, again, there's a
But
lot of parity.
what did Vanderbilt do this past week to earn the flip over Pepperdine would be my
But they
question.
beat NC State. What has Pepperdine done in 2023 period other than win 2 matches at kickoff weekend?
Right, but why would we be factoring in their NC State win again? Right, that
Well,
already was baked into last week's rankings.
Well, but I'm saying maybe that was the original mistake, is having Pepperdine above them even initially. And to your point, I agree with you. Like, I think Pepperdine should be in a top 8 seed. I understand the logic. I disagree with it. I would also say if you're going with this year's body of results, Michigan should probably be flipped. I like the Michigan-Virginia matchup makes sense. 2023 body of work. Michigan should probably be the 7th seed there. But like, again, looking at this board more broadly, not just seeding, the only outrageous matchup I see first round is Pepperdine, North Carolina, where again, those are 2 of our top 7 teams entering the 2023 season in our preseason poll. And obviously they're both undefeated. Obviously both of them faced off last year against one another in the NCAA quarterfinals. I know Oklahoma Duke, by the way, is an NCAA semifinal. That's a really good matchup, but look, Oklahoma had to be penalized, right, for the 3 losses that they've taken early in the season. There was just no world where they were going to be a top 8 seed given the results they have had. That's the only big picture, like, where if you're both fan bases, you're like, how does this happen? Other than that, Jay, what are your other big picture takeaways?
Well, I do think this is a pretty lopsided draw. But what's interesting is that I think it's lopsided because there are pockets of very difficult spots, individual matches, right? You look at an Iowa State versus Vanderbilt and a Michigan, Virginia. Those are pretty even matches, but relative to a match like UNC Pepperdine or even Stanford, Georgia, like it's a little heavyweight versus non-heavyweight. And so I think that there could be a little bit more even distribution. I think that Pepperdine seeding is a little criminal.
Well, the Pepperdine is the toughest. That's for sure. I don't think I can agree with you in Georgia because they've just lost too many matches. Like they lost at UNC.
2.
Yeah, but again, it's early in the season. Like, given how good some of these other teams have been, that's how thin the margins are right now. And
I
again,
don't think that's fair.
Well, here's the thing. That they seed 1 through 8, like there can only be 8 seeds. I think the resume of the 18, well, the Stanford
I mean, like,
but it's so thin. Like, it's always going to be tough choices no matter what. And again, I think more broadly, like, let's look big picture, left side versus right side of the draw. I think pretty balanced in terms of you've got big schools on each side, and big picture, like, again, whatever the final matchup is, I think it'll end up making sense. Like, I do think, like, obviously, again, Pepperdine UNC is the juggernaut. Other than that, it feels pretty balanced.
I mean, from a half perspective, I think you could maybe argue that. The problem is that you have some of these like the delta in the Texas versus Duke quarter is massive, right? The Pepperdine versus UNC being a first round match rather than a potential quarter, right? A huge difference. So like half maybe, but those pockets make it a pretty undistributed draw.
Well, here's the thing. I think if you look at the quarterfinals, if it all holds seed, Texas Vanderbilt, Stanford, Duke, A&M, Ohio State, North Carolina, Virginia. All those matchups make sense as quarterfinal matchups. Now, again, the one team you feel like is missing is certainly Pepperdine, and we've covered that at length. But, like, I don't mind the draw. I think this was always going to be a tournament filled with parity. I've said I think 4-2 is the magic number, and I see a lot of 4-2s on the board, Jay.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah.
My one other takeaway is, how is the broadcasting going to work for the quarterfinals? I see that we are at two different sites here.
We're in discussions. That's
Okay.
where, yeah, we'll leave
Got
that
it.
for now because,
Okay.
yes, that's something that was noticed as well. And so we'll leave that there. But ideally, they would all be at one site. I agree with you. Again, I like the matches. Certainly, you're right. That Duke, oh my God, I'm looking at that Duke quarter now. I mean, both of the bottom quarters, but like there were 9 good teams coming into this, or 11 good teams, like maybe even 16 good teams. So I do think this was always going to be like this. I will say I was there. Well, you know what? I'll get into that when we get into our previews. With that said, Jay, you ready to break down these matches?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go quarter by quarter. Let's start top left. Texas, two-time defending NCAA champions, your number 1 seed. They're taking on a Washington team that obviously, as the host, did not participate in the kickoff weekend. They're, I believe, 5-1, lost a tough match to Wisconsin. Although I think and I apologize to all these coaches, but I'm not going to name who they are. But I've had this conversation with a lot of them. There's a lot of recognition that like Wisconsin's very good this year. And so I don't throw out that was, again, I don't think that's a bad loss by Washington, particularly this early in the season. And look, you could argue Washington's the more experienced team. They bring back returners at the number 1, 2, 3 spots, and Astrid Olsen's finally healthy, playing again. They bring in a couple of transfers from Columbia, a freshman with a ton of junior slam experience. This is how you know I just did the Washington interview, folks. I'm going to be on top of my game here today. And
I had to step it up.
Yeah, look, 5 of the Washington players all have dual match experience. Like, yes, I mean, again, everyone does at this point of the season, but as we talked about in our preview, where do all the pieces fit for this Texas women's tennis team? Yes, there are some familiar faces. You have back, a Charlotte Shavatapan. You have back a couple of the sophomores in Uvarutsky and in Zainalova. You bring in Marley Zane, who certainly has plenty of experience. Tasha Pachkaleva, who has plenty of experience. Rapalou as well. And then, the newbies, Rivkin, Kieran. Where do they fit in? I'll say this, and this was the perfect tease. I was there last year when a ruckus Seattle crowd helped propel the Washington men to play the Ohio State top-seeded Buckeyes very, very close. And that was an extraordinary match. And anytime you go into a match with Clement Shedek, you're feeling pretty good about life. But, again, this Washington team has some serious talent. I'm blanking on the name of their number 2, Sarah Maud, last name I'm blanking on. Yeah, Fountain, who has dropped like 3 dual matches over the course of the past 2 years at the number 2 spot. You love her experience there. They are the home crowd. This is a Friday night match. This one's frisky. We're making the case for each team, Jay. Let's start with the top seeded Texas Longhorns.
Well, I have to address a few things. First of all, I don't know why you need these coaches to tell you that Wisconsin is good. I have been on that bandwagon for several weeks now.
I have been on that bandwagon since last year. Come on now.
That is true. That's very true. And also, Washington's number 2 is the one win that they did get over Wisconsin. Right. I will say that the rest of those 5 singles matches were all in straight sets. That's a Wisconsin team that isn't at indoors. So, that's challenging. I think you just made the case for Washington, right? I mean, this is going to be a home crowd night match, Friday night. If they can turn out the crowd, they're going to be facing a Texas team that does have freshmen, right, and inexperience on that roster that they will need, right? Nicole Kieran at number 1. They've been playing Rivkin at number 6. So this will be a new experience for many of those Texas players. Certainly the rest of the roster is sprinkled in with a lot of experience, but Texas has never performed that well here at indoors. You look at last year, that was a struggle for them. So that's the case for Washington. The case for Texas is that they looked great against USC this past week. They, blitzed USC 6-1. The one match they lost was Maddie Sieg at number 1 from USC. So look, they look really strong. They've started this season stronger than they started last season, relatively. I think what you like about this Texas team is that, there isn't a Peyton Stearns at number one that you feel is like a lock of locks, but 1 through 6, right? The drop off is next to nothing. And so you don't feel like there are any vulnerable spots. And if one or two players are off, you feel like there's enough pieces there to make up the parts.
Yeah. I mean, again, looking for this Texas team. Yes, they did get the 6-1 win over USC. They had 3-set matches, all, 2 of which broke their way. Obviously, Kieran Sieg go 3 sets. That's a fascinating matchup between 2 freshmen. Rapalou, Pachkaleva able to win each of their matches in 3 sets as well. This team has depth, but the delta between them and the rest of the field is not nearly as big as it was in 2021. And certainly without Peyton Stearns, you feel like it's not quite there either. In 2020, without Peyton Stearns, this 2023 team, maybe that delta is still not there as big as that was as well by the end of the year. They're untested. They're deep. They're talented. They've gotten some wins. More importantly, they've looked like they found some teams in doubles, which I just think is going to be so critical throughout the course of this event. You were very succinct in those previews. And if you keep that efficiency, Jay, this show will not be as long as some may dread it will be. Let's go. Question 2, most likely calculi. Let's start with Washington. If they win, what's their path to 4?
Doubles on the path, on the momentum of the crowd, right? Home crowd advantage, take dubs. Definitely number 2, right? Even though Shavathapan had looked very strong. And then 2 other singles victories.
Yeah. I go Sato at 1 and maybe Sakar at Sakar at 5.
Okay.
Or Saker. I might have said it wrong. I apologize. That would be my path. What's the Texas?
I mean, I think they can find 4 points across the board here. I don't know if there's necessarily a calculus that they will rely on. And I actually think that's going to be the case for this Texas team against all of these teams. I don't think that there is like one spot that really pings for Texas. I mean, Shavathapan and Zainalova have both looked good to start the season, and that's excellent news for Texas. Probably 4, 5, and 6 are maybe the spots you're thinking like we can maybe find some wins there.
Yeah, 6-0 wins over Tulane, SMU, Baylor, USC, amongst others.
Yeah, they
all right. Give me the pick then.
Texas
score
4-0.
Yeah, I want this. I want the school and score for all of them. By the way. All right, then let's continue moving down in this Texas quarter. Obviously, a very frisky matchup between 2 teams with a ton of veterans, top to bottom. In 8th-seeded Vanderbilt taking on Iowa State. Vandy obviously went to NC State, beat the Wolfpack, sans Diana Schneider, but still an impressive 4-3 victory, particularly given they dropped doubles for Iowa State, wins over UCLA and Miami in the kickoff weekend. First time this program will have competed at the National Indoors, first time since 2019 that Vanderbilt's been there. Start with the 8th-seeded Commodores. What's the case for them in this match? What do you like as their biggest strengths?
Well, first off, this is a great first round for both of these teams because they will leave indoors. One of them will leave indoors with a win over a top 16 team, right?
Sure.
And they will get to face potentially Texas in that second round. So they're both very happy with this draw. It feels like a winnable draw for both of them. Looking at
just to that point quickly, you're right, because pound for pound, each of these teams have more experienced players than Texas. And it's funny because I think it's the first time for every player on the Vanderbilt Iowa State rosters that they've played the indoors. I mean, Kieran, Rivkin, they've only played, this will be their first. Zane's played 1, maybe 2 for Florida. I know she played last year, but you're right. It's not the worst draw.
Yeah, it's not the worst draw, but at least getting through this first round is winnable, right? And is important. You can stay motivated there, not playing these consolation matches. And I also think these 2 teams are very evenly matched. up and down the lineup. We've talked about Iowa State. I mean, 1 through 6, extremely strong. Same thing with Vanderbilt. That has been the team strength. There are other teams that we will eventually get to. It seems like we're talking about like all of these teams. Oh, 1 through 6 is the same. It's not the case on some of these teams, but for Vanderbilt and Iowa State, the depth is there. They can win at any position. I think if you are Vanderbilt, I think it probably comes at, it's going to be tough. I mean, I don't know if I like,
Well, look,
maybe.
Bellamore is going to have a shot at Naklo at that number 1 spot. That's
Yep.
a popcorn matchup because
Yep.
Bellamore, I think, she had a really successful fall. I think 16-7 at the number overall on the year, and obviously Naklo has been a top 35 player over the course of the past 2 seasons. Again, that's the thing, is how many toss-ups there are. It's like Ross,
Yep.
Staff, and Lee, Stevens. You feel like they have similar levels of experience and success as that Iowa State court of, Obi and, Anna, and just, again, Sophia up and down the roster, and each of them incorporating one new player. Now, Bridget Stammel's probably been, about as good as any freshman we've seen in the country, not named Brantmeyer Blokina thus far. Like, it comes down to doubles. Who do you like
Yeah.
more in doubles?
I lean Iowa State in
Okay.
this match. I think that I know that Vanderbilt has the NC State win, but Iowa State was impressive in kickoff weekend, particularly their match over Miami. I like the fight of this team. Vanderbilt is bringing a few players back from injury. It helps with depth. I like Naklo at 1. So I'm leaning Iowa State in this match.
We're going to do this retroactively. I'm going to ask you for each of these. You have to pick one swing match in singles. Start with Washington, Texas. Who do you pick?
Oh, well, I mean, number 2, right?
Okay.
That's like a must win for Washington.
What's the swing match in this one?
I'll go the winner of Naklo and Belmore wins the match.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
always nice when it comes down to the number 1 spot. Again, depth, experience everywhere. And with how good Stammel has been, she's picked it up hand in a glove. And I asked Coach Subanis about her, and you can go check that out over on the Cracked Interviews podcast feed. You're saying 4-3 Cyclones?
It's 4-3 either way. I'm going 4-3 Cyclones in this one.
Aliki versus Boomer is fun. And by the way, fun subplot of this match, Boomer Saya, former volunteer assistant at what school, Jay?
Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt, indeed. He was there, I believe, that 2016 season before headed off to Texas Tech and then subsequently Iowa State. So fun little subplot there. But again, Jay, first upset picked of the draw. He's taken the Cyclones over the Commodores. Let's move on now to stay on the left side. We'll go to the bottom half now. Blue blood versus blue blood. Stanford versus Georgia. Now, this has been an NCAA semifinal, final, national indoor semifinal, final. We've seen these two play at the biggest stages before. Obviously, new iterations for these teams. Look, we were all looking forward to seeing Stanford tested by Pepperdine last weekend. Unfortunately, that match gets rained out, though. Pepperdine does take the doubles. I mean, look, for the Georgia Bulldogs, yes, it's 2 losses, but let's be clear. They lost to North Carolina, and they lost to the hottest team to start the 2023 season in Ohio State. And you still feel like for this Georgia team, they're trying to figure out what should their 6 pieces be. Meanwhile, Stanford, of course, you work in a couple of uber talented freshmen. You bring back returners like Yepafanova, Ma, and Blake, and Choi, and just they got options. This is a phenomenal round of 16 match, Jay. Let's start with the 5th seeded Cardinal. Talk to me about their pathway to victory.
Well, it starts with it starts with doubles because Georgia needs to figure out doubles, right? They were up big in that North Carolina match in doubles at 1 and 2 doubles. They ended up losing that doubles point to North Carolina. That ultimately could have determined the match, right? Least we forget that, Leah Ma hands Fiona Crawley her first loss of the academic season at number 1. Dasha Vidmanova beats Reese Brantmeyer at number 2.
There were what, 4 3-setters?
Yeah, and then all these other ones were 4-3 sets. I mean, this was a very close match with North Carolina on the road. It made that loss in Columbus, which was just it was a total blowout. It made that almost just so shocking. You're like, I don't really know what to do with this loss. Like, what's the real Georgia here? But Stanford comes in. I mean, no secrets about this Stanford team, right? We know their 6 players that you're going to see there. I think the challenge that Stanford has is this is one team that I look at that is significantly better outdoors than they are indoors, particularly at 5 and 6 singles. And I think we saw that struggle indoors last season when they went on the road and played Virginia in the first, 2 rounds there. It's going to be tough for Stanford to overcome being indoors here. I think if you are Stanford, you're going to have to rely heavily on the top of their lineup in Connie Ma, Sasha Yepafinova, and one of Angelica Blake or Alexis Blakina. They certainly have the talent. So that's the Stanford recap.
Am I, as Alexander Scott Gruskin, good enough at tennis to go by Sasha Scott?
Why would you go by? Oh,
because I'm an Alexander too.
Yeah, but you're not. You're not Eastern European.
I mean, there's some Polish relatives. You've seen my eyebrows. Like there were a lot of us many moons ago before. For reasons
Sasha Gruskin.
For reasons people can imagine, we had to immigrate elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, again, this Stanford team is fascinating because you look at that top 4 of Yepafinova, Ma, Blokina, and Blake, and what order will they play them in? Obviously, we've seen a little platoon system. Connie Ma's worked her way back up to the top of the lineup. Will it be Blake, Blokina, 3 or 4? Probably Blake at that 3 spot. It's a very good team. And indoors, you like the weapons of Yepafinova, of Blake, of Blokina.
How about Yepafinova, Vidmanova? Is
Battle of the Ovas.
Time. Battle of the Ovas. That's big time tennis on court number 2.
So on the flip side, you talked about Georgia. They dropped 5 first sets in singles and doubles against Ohio State on the road. They go on the road against North Carolina. If nothing else, they're tested. And obviously, things got frisky between them and Notre Dame as well in the ITA kickoff weekend, at least after they dropped the doubles point. What's their match calculus? What's their pathway to 4?
So this is tough because I think that clearly they're playing North Carolina and they take top 2 singles. They're going to feel good about top 2 singles against any team. Ooh, I don't know if you like either of those matchups with
strength on strength.
It's strength on strength. Exactly. Look, the strength of this Georgia team is going to be their depth over Stanford, and it's going to be at 5 and 6 because they are going to have players who can likely overpower either Valencia Shu or Sarah Choi indoors, 2 players who don't have the weapons indoors and don't play indoors, right? So they're looking at getting 5 and 6 off the bat. I think number 3 is also where they're looking at Mel Riasco, who stepped up into that number 1 position at the end of last season for Georgia, now at 3. I think that's one that they will really like over Angelica Blake of Stanford. And then who would be at 4? Oh my gosh, Kowalski versus Blakina. Freshman versus 5th year. That's
contrast of styles.
Contrast in styles, absolutely. I think, this in a lot of ways comes down to Vidmanova, Yepafinova, because I think that would Kowalski can beat Blakina. She has the experience to do it, but Vidmanova was impressive against Brantmeier. Disregarding what happened in Columbus, I think she can also she has the weapons to take on Yepafinova indoors. Yeah. But I actually look at this match, and there are 3 matches in singles that Georgia likes a lot.
Well, what are your candidates? Well, obviously, again, the big question is still Hurdle, Lapata, Grant, Narundorn. Who exactly will be in those 5 and 6 spots? Because they have switched things up a little bit early here in the season. By the way, Kevin Laracy chimes in. He says he thinks Ma gets the win at that number 1 spot.
That's cheeky.
Ma over Leah Ma. Yeah, you see what he did there?
I see what he did there.
That's good. Shout out to him for the pun that had to be made. All right, then. Money where the mouth is. Who's winning this match, Jay?
Yeah, I go Georgia. I think that the Columbus match was not Georgia's best. I think that Georgia team against North Carolina is much closer to the Georgia that we will see throughout the season. And I think this is Stanford's first indoors match in a year, more than a year. And I think Georgia takes it.
All right.
You want scoreline? I'll go 4-2.
What's your swing match?
Well, I think if Vidmanova beats Yepafinova, then Georgia wins this match. The bellwether would probably be Sarah Choi of Stanford at 6, and whoever Georgia plays at 6.
Yeah, and again, we were robbed of that opportunity to see Stanford tested against Pepperdine this past weekend. And who was the other match against? It was Pepperdine and...
Well, no, Pepperdine was playing Stanford and Cal.
Oh, just back to back.
Yeah.
It was just the one for them. I see. Okay. Well, again, it's a fascinating matchup. Two of the bluest blue bloods in college tennis, and they're playing round of 16. A testament to this year in the sport. Let's go to that final matchup on the left side of the draw. It's a rematch of the ITA kickoff weekend from last year. It's a rematch of the NCAA semifinal. And in fact, Duke women's tennis had 4 losses last season. 2 of them were to their first round opponents, the Oklahoma Sooners, who of course entered the match 5-3. Losses on the road at NC State, at Duke, at NC State, at Michigan, at Ohio State. But again, this group beat this Duke team twice last season. And yes, there are some new faces for this Duke team. No doubt about it. Mora, Shvets, Brizgalova, I think, right, is the other one. Yes, shout out to the brain.
She's a transfer.
Yeah, obviously you've seen Emma Jackson take a major step up here early in the season. How healthy is Drummy? How healthy is Shvets? On the Oklahoma side of things, how do they rebound after the early season struggles? I implore everyone to go check out the podcast, not because it's always a pleasure to speak with Coach Cohen, but because Coach Cobra joins us on the show as well. And it was very, very fun. It's always a pleasure to speak with that duo. And look, this is what they have circled on the calendar. This group came to college tennis fame last year at the National Indoors when they reached the finals. They beat Texas. They beat Pepperdine. They were sensational. They were up a set and doubles point, I think 4 first sets, right? Against North Carolina, whatever it was. It's a great matchup. It's going to be really fun, Jay. We'll start with the number 4 seeded Duke. They beat Wisconsin in the kickoff weekend 4-1. It's a team that hasn't played a ton together, but individually, Shvets has played the indoors. Mora's won it every time she's played it the last 3 years, even if it's at North Carolina. Obviously, players like Drummy, Beck, you're ready to go to war with. Jackson and, whomever else were part of the semifinal run last year. Give me the case for this Duke team.
Well, talk about circling this match. I mean, they are going to want to beat Oklahoma, right? I mean, this is a very full circle moment. This is where the Duke match for Oklahoma is where it all began last year in that second round of kickoff weekend, and where things really went south for Duke team until they, found steam in April, right? So, I mean, neither team is going to need to get up for this match. They are going to be looking forward to this one. I think with Duke, you feel really good about Chloe Beck at 1. You feel good about her at anywhere else. So I think that's one position Duke feels really good about. I think Georgia Drummy, not playing 2 right now and playing either 3 or 4, wherever they slot her in, that's a match you feel very good about. That's someone who was, undefeated at the number 2 position last year. You like Duke in doubles. They have a lot of pieces that they can factor in, including Karolina Barankova, who doesn't play singles, so she'll be fresh, not only for this match, but just throughout the tournament. So there are definitely points that Duke likes, and I think all of those points they would like against this Oklahoma team as well. I think the questions for this Duke team is going to be of those now sophomores in Emma Jackson and Ellie Coleman, and the grad transfers, right, in Brizgalova or Svets, who factors in there at 3 through 6, and how they perform, for those most of those players playing their first time.
Yeah, very well said. And I was having this conversation with some coaches off the record, again, of all the players in college tennis, you could have one from any other roster in the country. Who would you pick? And I think there's 3 candidates right now, excluding Diana Schneider. I think Chloe Beck is certainly one of them. I think Fiona Crawley's on that list. I think Savannah Brodus is on that list. I think that's the list right now. If you ask any coach, hey, you get to poach any player in the country, I think those are the first 3 names that would come to mind. Am I crazy?
No, those are all on the short list.
Yeah, I think that is the short list, as a matter of fact. And look, again, how healthy is Drummy? That's the question. Will she be at the 4 spot, the 3 spot? Where do they put Jackson? You're right. How many of the Ivy League transfers do we see in action? But it's an experienced Duke team that, to your point, will have this match circled. Flip side, Oklahoma. They've played around with the singles lineup. Doubles has gone really well. I mean, they've taken the
Yeah.
doubles point every match that they've played. It's just, will they find their rhythm in singles? Give me the case. What do you like?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for Oklahoma. I feel like they kind of got the air bursted from their balloon a little bit in going to North Carolina State and being the first victim of Diana Schneider's eligibility. Having her in the lineup, tough for them to lose that on the road 6-1. So it's like another rebound, right? We talked about this when they go on the road losing to Michigan and Ohio State. They have to rebound for kickoff. They go on the road, NC State, lose. They got to rebound for indoors. So I think you're right. Doubles has consistently looked solid. If it's not the Corleys at 1, 2 and 3 are coming in. If Corley's getting the win, they just need one other. So I think you really like doubles for Oklahoma. Donna Guzman, I think, has been in good form all season. And it's a question of, how well Carmen Corley is playing on that given day. And then 4 through 6, right? You have Staker, Garcia, and most likely Pisareva there. Kind of how do those pieces factor in? I think in looking at this matchup against Duke, I think Oklahoma will favor some of those pieces at the 4 through 6 spot, because at least Staker, Pisareva, those players have been extremely clutch for them in these tight moments, and likely facing opponents in Duke who either haven't been in these sorts of tight moments or are new to these tight moments. So doubles is certainly a must. I think if you ask about what's the match, I think it's doubles here, because if Oklahoma doesn't get it, I don't think they get the win. For Oklahoma to get this match, they got to take doubles. They have to have Carmen Corley at 2 over Cam Mora. They need to have Emma Staker at 4, and they need to have Pisareva at 6.
Are we sure Staker's going to be at 4?
Sleeth, Corley, Guzman.
Maybe you play Ruiz at 4?
At 4.
Given, again, it's been about equal success between the two of them.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that was certainly on the horizon, right?
Yeah.
As a potential. I think either way,
No,
like.
again, it's parity between the two. It's not a bad
Yeah.
option either way. I'm just something I'm floating.
Yeah.
No, I think this team is going to be, again, I think this is going to be a battle. And it's interesting you see such a clear-cut match calculus. Certainly 5 and 6, given the experience Oklahoma has in that top 4, or top 3, excuse me, 4, 5, 6. You feel like for Oklahoma, yes, that is where their experience may shine through. I do wonder which coach likes this matchup more, Coach Cohen or Coach Ashworth. And when it's like, again, if you're Oklahoma, it's like, we know this Duke team. If you're Duke, it's like, we want this Oklahoma team. It's
Well, they
interesting.
don't know this Duke team, right? Because they're now looking at a Duke team with,
I
Cam
don't know, though. They
Mora.
know Mora. They saw her last year.
Yeah. I mean, they know the pieces, right?
Yeah.
But it's a much more whole Oklahoma team for Duke, right? These are
Sure.
basically these are the exact same players. So it's a little easier in that regard. Like the Duke 3 through 6, and it's a lot. It's things are happening down there. It's like a revolving door for some of these players.
Yeah.
So I think we'll
Yeah.
see.
All right. Well, then with that said, what is your swing match? You said for Oklahoma, it's doubles. What does Duke need to get?
The match calculus for Duke, I think they can do it without doubles. I think they definitely need to get Chloe back at 1. I think they need to get Drummy wherever she is at either 3 or 4. And then Emma Jackson at 3 or 4. Gosh, I mean, if I'm Duke, I just want to sweep the top 4.
Yeah, I think 4 is the swing match. I really do.
Yeah.
Like if it's Garcia versus Jackson at that spot. Versus Jackson at that spot. That's a battle. Like lock in. I think that's the winner of that one wins the match. With that in mind, who you taking, Jay?
This is the toughest prediction for me
Are
so
both
far.
of these players, both of these teams candidates to win the title?
I think it's tough to put Oklahoma in that category right now, given just what we've seen from them. I mean, they're coming off a 6-1 loss to NC State. Tough to put them in the category. And I honestly wouldn't put Duke in the category right now because we just haven't seen enough, right? So I feel like we have one team that we've seen a lot of in Oklahoma, and it's been not great. And then Duke, who I haven't seen enough from them playing top competition. I don't know how these players are playing.
Go on.
I have to go Duke on this one. I, I think even with Schneider, it wasn't Oklahoma's best performance. There's just it's tough to bet on that team right now.
By the way, I mean, it's just, again, we don't get enough rivalries in college tennis because of how many moving pieces there are. You play 3 times in 13 months. That's what a rivalry looks like. So this is one to enjoy. 4-3 is the number, like regardless of where it goes. And I'm very, very excited for that matchup, which I believe is the noon Pacific time matchup at the Nordstrom Tennis Center. All right. By the way, all those first 4 matchups happening at the Nordstrom Tennis Center, these next 4 all happening at the Seattle Tennis Club. Let's move on to that right side of the draw now. We'll start at the bottom. Let's get to it. Marquee matchup. Number 2, North Carolina, taking on Pepperdine. Now, this was an NCAA quarterfinal matchup last year, won by the North Carolina Tar Heels. I mean, the amount of top 25 players in this match. North Carolina, every player on the roster is top 25. And as I've said before, on the Pepperdine side, Czar, Chen, Brodus, Tim Chiwat, I'll roll with those 4. We'll figure out the other 2 spots anyways. And in Redelic and the Campanas, obviously they have some options down there as well, do these Pepperdine Waves. North Carolina, I'm not sure how healthy Yarlagata is, but I don't care. Yeah. Forbes at 4, Scotty at 5, number 1 Fiona Crawley at 1, Reese Brantmeyer at 2. Like, again, these are all household names. Carson Tangillig at 3. Like, we know all the pieces. Even Riley Tran, if she's at 6, she was a top 40 player at points throughout the course of last season. To some extent, it's super team versus super team, and it's a round of 16 freaking battle here, Jay. Look, North Carolina, 3-time defending national indoor champions. Elizabeth Scotty has never lost at this event in her career. This is going to be a special match. There is, obviously, these 2 teams have played, like Pepperdine, North Carolina, 2021 NCAA semifinals, goes the ways of the Waves. North Carolina Pepperdine, 2022 NCAA quarterfinals, goes the way of the Tar Heels. What's the difference between the 2 matches? One of them was indoors. It was won by the Tar Heels. One was outdoors. It was won by the Waves. This match is indoors, Jay. It's delight. It's going to be fantastic. I mean, again, let's start with the Tar Heels. Give me the case.
Well, I mean, you can just point to the banners, right, of how many times they have won this indoor title. And look, I mean, they have, top to bottom, just top 25 players. I mean, Elizabeth Scotty was demolishing players at indoors at number 2 last year, hardly losing games, and now she will be at 5 for them. Right. I think that their doubles has looked extremely solid. You have Elizabeth Scotty, NCAA doubles champion. You have Reese Brantmeyer. You have Fiona Crawley and Tangillig, number 1 team in the country. So doubles is extremely strong. I mean, we've talked so much about this North Carolina team. Like, the case is that they can win at 1 through 6. And if any one of those players wins, they feel good about every single position in that lineup.
Yeah, they're really freaking good. And again, you look at their doubles teams and they're laughable because it's like, oh, Crawley and Tangillig, who were the 2nd best team in college tennis in the fall, they're your 2. And it's because Brantmeyer, who's winning pro events, and NCAA doubles champ Elizabeth Scotty are 1. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, you're just going to throw Abby Forbes, an All-American, at 3 with Riley Tran, who's had a ton of success in doubles as well. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's the options they have. And, again, the matchups are fascinating in this one, right? Because for this Pepperdine team, you feel like you're going to win the top 4 in every match that you play. And, again, Brodus versus, I think, Tangillig at the 3 spot in this match. Like, talk about the athleticism. You're going to see each of these players do things that, like, 0.1% of elite tennis players can do on the court. And like, they're going to be spiking high backhand volleys. That's the point. And again, if you're playing North Carolina, you need big guns. This team has big guns. I talk about how great North Carolina doubles is. I think Chen and Brodus could walk into the WTA top 100 right now. Like, again, Savannah Broadus hit this high backhand volley against Clemson that literally my jaw dropped. It's like I had a coach growing up who worked with Anna Kournikova. Shout out to being from West Bloomfield, Michigan, that area. And he used to talk about like you could see the athleticism for her. She would like do these box jumps and like spike balls that no one else could. That's Broadus. Like it's electric. And then again, Chen, her serve, her forehand, non-negotiable weapons. Czar has you on court for a minimum 2 hours. And if you don't have a weapon to hurt her, she's beating you. Tim Chaiwat's an All-American. Like, that's their top 4. They have their own big guns in this battle. Talk to me what you like about this Waves team.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about doubles with Chen and Brothers at number 1. I mean, they saved at least 5 match points to stay on the court against Blake and Blockine at number 1 doubles this weekend. In the rare action we did see from them, they're a top doubles team in the country. That is a fun number 1 doubles matchup. But I was actually really impressed by Czar and Tomchaiwat at number 2. Lisa Czar has improved tremendously in doubles since a few years ago, and she pairs extremely well with Tomchaiwat, who is just so solid from the baseline. And Lisa Czar is actually like up and around, moving up at net. Their number 2 team is really good as well. Look, the calculus here for Pepperdine is narrower than North Carolina's, and that's because
we apologize for the technical difficulties that'll happen from time to time. Of course, we're in the midst of our Pepperdine, North Carolina preview. Jay, what we were discussing when things went awry is just, look, the options might be a little bit tighter for Pepperdine. I think the battle between Tomchaiwat and Forbes at that number 4 spot, that's my inflection point. Because, again, Pepperdine has the big guns. They play loose. They play free. They're not afraid of this North Carolina team. They've seen them before. They're not the big bad wolf. And so, again, I think this is going to be a really good matchup. Your thoughts on that inflection point? I think it's fascinating you say, again, North Carolina either loses this match or wins the tournament.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think I wouldn't even say that number 4 is an inflection point for Pepperdine. I think it's a must win because I think else they have to sweep 1 through 3 if they get dubs, right? So, look, this is why I'm so pissed about this match being a round of 16 match because, look, give Pepperdine 1 match indoors, playing under a roof, getting that experience, taking
literally indoors.
Literally indoors, right? They've only played 2 matches this season. They haven't played an indoors match. Like, they got to play at least 1 match. Then let's make this a quarterfinal. Then I feel like this is going to be an absolute battle. You talk about Pepperdine, swinging freely. And I think they do. I just want them to be, having that experience under their belt. For that reason alone, and North Carolina coming in just much more tested, I think you have to lean North Carolina because the margins are much thinner for this Pepperdine team. This was a quarterfinal match. We see Pepperdine in action. Look, Pepperdine has the pieces, doubles 1 through 4, to upset North Carolina.
It's going to be a really freaking good match. And again, it's one we've seen in big stages repeatedly of late. Rivalries are fleeting in college tennis. Duke, Georgia, Duke, Oklahoma is certainly one of them. I think this is one as well. And by the way, Pepperdine's going to have chances to make it up. They still have a loaded schedule. The winner-loser of this plays the winner-loser Virginia, Michigan. That's a great second match as well. With that said, Jay, money where the mouth is. Make the pick.
North Carolina 4-2.
I love it. All right, let's move up the draw here now to that aforementioned Michigan-Virginia match. Look, 3 wins, 2 over Oklahoma State, 1 over Oklahoma. They've beaten Kansas as well. This Michigan team has about as nice of a resume as any team you would want to face. That said, they're taking on a Virginia team that's looked pretty darn solid throughout the course of this 2023 season. Now, again, relatively untested, I would say, are the Who's so far, but certainly you look at what this group was able to accomplish with their kickoff weekend victories. They get, the 4-1 win over Washington State, 4-1 win over South Carolina as well. Wins over William Mary, James Madison, Richmond as well to complement this season. I mean, look, 1 through 6, Michigan's got proven commodities everywhere. And with how well Lily Jones is competing as a freshman at that number 5 spot, she's backed up what we saw from her in the fall. That said, again, from an experience perspective, this Virginia team, they've got a lot of options. Adams, Chervinsky, Collard, Subash, Ziadato. Shoes looked pretty good so far as well, Jay. This is an old-fashioned brouhaha, as I like to say. This is a juicy matchup. By the way, this is Jay versus Alex for what it's worth. Start with the number 7 seeded Cavs, what you've seen from them so far, what you'd like as their case.
Well, it's tough, right? They very much fall into that category of, yeah, we've seen them play matches. We just haven't seen them against really difficult competition. That kickoff weekend, South Carolina, that was without Sarah Hamner. So it's been, fairly easy going for Virginia so far. They've hardly dropped points. So they will come into this one of the more untested teams on the year. And they also have a lot of new pieces, right? They have experience in a Julia Adams who's been anchoring them at number 1, but she's never been to indoors. I don't think Furman has made it in the last few years. And then you have freshman and Annabelle Shu, so they've got new factors here for Virginia. I think what you feel good about is you feel good about Subash and Chervinsky at 2 and 3, right? Those are players who anchored the 2 and 3 spots for this Virginia team who made the NCAA quarterfinals last year. And you feel good about Heba Sheikh, Sarah Ziadato, who anchored 5 and 6 last year. So those are the parts you feel really good about. They'll be facing some players in this Michigan lineup who don't have that experience, certainly not at this at indoors or against this level and this visibility.
Yeah, and Virginia hasn't dropped a set in doubles so far, 12-0, perfect. And regardless of the level of competition, that is still an impressive start. Flip side, Michigan blew a match point, still took the doubles against Oklahoma State. They win a tough 4-2 battle there. And then to quote Coach Bernstein, maybe most impressively, they follow that up. No letdown. They beat Oklahoma State pretty solidly in battle number 2 between the two schools within the week. They're tested. They've been on the road. It is their first time here since 2020, and no one on this team, except for I think Serdan, was a member of that 2020 indoors team. Talk to me about the strengths of this Wolverines roster. What's their case here?
Well, slowly but surely, they have a top 2 that they feel extremely good about.
Best since Bectis and Ronit, no doubt.
Yeah, it's not at that level, but
yeah, no. But I'm saying like
best
or
sense.
Like with like Fahey and Minor, like Bectis and Ronit. It's like that's, you need a top 2 like that to be in this tier, and you're right, they do have it.
Yeah, it's a Fahey Minor is a better analog. But look, they can win at 1 and 2 against all these teams, particularly indoors, right? And they, although maybe you like Kari Miller better outside, but look, they have a top 2 that can anchor this lineup. And what they have proven in these matches against Oklahoma State twice, is that they have very real depth in this Michigan team. Now, I'm curious to see how that is tested against a Virginia team who, coming into this season, we talked about their depth, right? They could likely play the same players they played in the quarterfinals of last year's NCAA in the same positions. We just haven't seen that Virginia depth tested so far. I think Michigan coming in, doubles has been better, right? You like them to at least get one of the top 2. And then I think Michigan, you start to lean them at 4, and then maybe 5 and 6 starts to swing Virginia's way, but we just haven't seen that. This is a matchup that I feel very confident in Michigan taking. If not 4, they've just been extremely tested in a way that Virginia hasn't.
So what's the swing match?
Well, the swing match for Michigan is probably if they can take number 3, Fliegner, over Chervinsky. That kind of feels like the blowout knockout punch.
Mm-hmm. Flip side?
For Virginia?
Yeah.
I think Virginia needs to win 2, 3, 5, and 6.
Yeah, I think or who's 5 for Virginia?
Well, it might be Heba Sheikh.
Hervers Jones is the one I would circle as well. I think that's a big one.
Yeah. Is Jones going to be at 5?
That's a good question. It's something that remains to be seen. Again, who will be 3, 4, 5? What will Michigan do? Where will they put Gala? Where will they put again, will we see Nicole Hammond? I think it's all
Yeah.
fun questions worth
But
asking. How healthy is Gala?
yeah, I think that's Virginia's calculus, though. They have to rely on the players that they had in last year's team, and that's at 2, 3, 5, and 6.
What's Michigan's?
Well, I actually like Michigan in doubles, right? I like
Okay.
Michigan at 1 for sure. And then I like them at 4. Depending on who they play, but if Virginia plays Annabelle Shu, this is big lights for her.
Shu versus Jones at 4, a couple freshmen. How fun would
Yeah,
that be?
yeah, I probably like Shu indoors, but we've just seen more of Jones, right? Um, and then I think that they can get I think they can get Travinsky at 3 as well.
Interesting. So with that said, give me the pick.
I think Michigan 4-2.
All
This is
right.
like a on paper very even match that I feel very confident in Michigan taking.
All right, Jay's taking Michigan 4-2. Well, then let's move to our final quarter of the draw. Let's go to the hottest team in the country right now, number 6, Ohio State. They beat Oklahoma. They beat Oklahoma State, Georgia, Tennessee, Old Dominion. They've won 6 first sets in a couple of matches. They get 5 in singles against Georgia as well. But look, they're taking on a team they know in Auburn, and this was a really fun 4-3 match between these two schools last year at the National Indoors. A lot of returners on the roster. Obviously, for this Ohio State team, the rise of Shelly Baryzniak, who's healthy, playing such good tennis to start this season for Auburn. They've got a couple of freshmen, though, contributing right away as well. Start with the Buckeyes, Jay. Your reaction to their win over Georgia, your thoughts on their calculus in this one.
I said this earlier. I have no idea what to make of that win over Georgia. I'm not sure I put much stock in it, to be honest. I think that the Georgia team, used all their fight in that North Carolina match and run out of gas on the road in Columbus. But so I'm not sure that Ohio State is probably somewhere in between where they are ranked right now and where they were ranked. But look, it's indoors. I think Ohio State right now is looking very solid. 1 through 6, the Baryzniak addition this season, playing in the lineup, playing so well, has allowed them to keep some of their experience down at 6. They have not looked good in doubles. I think that's been one of the weaker spots for Ohio State. But look, I mean, Sydney Ratliff emerging at the 1 position. The big thing for them has been having, Irina Kontos, who has previously played at the top of the lineup here, factoring in at number 3. So if that's full strength and Boulay is firing on all cylinders to hold down that number 2 position, it's an Ohio State team that can win at every single position. What you really like is it's basically all returners, right?
Yeah.
Like these players have all been through, some of them are 5th years. It's a very, very experienced Ohio State team, which is juxtaposed to the Auburn team.
I would expect to see Kontos over Boulay this weekend. I would expect to
Interesting.
see Allen over Baryzniak as well. Those would be my 2 takes for you.
Why Kontos over Boulay, given that Boulay's played 2 this
I just think
entire
Arena's
season?
been too good. I just think
Mm,
I just don't know if they're going to be able to get away with it, to be
mm,
honest.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then again, I
And
think they got options 4, 5, 6 right now. We'll see what they are. Flip side, again, this is an Auburn team that was at this event last season, and sorry, Arsenault, Flack, they all competed here. Now, still no Ovunk for this group, but Bennett's been solid. Kamikchella, I believe is how you say it, has been solid as well. Honestly, so has Okuchi,
Okatori.
Okatori. Thank you. It's been a long day throughout the course of the early parts of the season. They got tested kickoff weekend. They ultimately get through a couple of tough matches. I mean, look, again, veterans everywhere. This is an aggressive Auburn team. I think they'll be ready to play indoors as well. What's the case? What's the path?
Well, this is an Auburn team that's coming off of an extremely close 4-3 match at Texas Tech, right? Came down to a 3rd set tiebreak at number 2 singles. Carolyn Ansari got the win there. I feel like this Auburn team is probably going to feel like they're playing with house money a little bit, right? Without their number 1 player in Celine Ovonk, everyone has had to step up into new roles that maybe they weren't expecting to have to fill this season, particularly Arsenal and Ansari at 1 and 2. And then I think that the hard part for this Auburn team is they do have 3 freshmen right there in the middle of the lineup at 3, 4, and 5. So not only are these players new to indoors, but they're still adjusting to college tennis. Okatori, a spring admit, right? So she's still adjusting, and they're facing on, from an experience standpoint, just a team in Ohio State that has a lot more experience in indoors, in college tennis. I think for Auburn to take this match, their calculus starts with doubles. I thought overall doubles has looked decent to start the year. I think but they have to get, one or number 2. They just have to get one of those off the board. They probably have to get 6 with Flock, and then one of, I think Okatori has looked good, as well as Caitlin at 5. Nisanelli, I think is the right pronunciation, but
Sure.
yeah, I think one of the freshmen needs to step up. Potentially DJ Bennett, her weapons indoors you really like, particularly if she's playing Boulay, right? So that's kind of a bang bang match. But I think the experience of Ohio State really proves out here. I like the Buckeyes 4-1.
All right, and he's right to a pick there. If there is a swing match, what is it?
I'll go Boulay Bennett if you think Boulay is going to play 3. I think Bennett can get that win at 3. I think Auburn's in the conversation.
I think it's Arsenault Ratliff at 1. I think the experience of Arsenault, Sydney Ratliff, who's looked very good, certainly has the skills to play 1. But again, Arsenault, a few more reps in those top 2 spots. I think that's one Auburn's got to have. If they win that, they might be in the fight. If Ohio State wins it, just again, the strength at the bottom of the lineup, the experience factor, that might be where they separate. But still, 4-3 last year. These teams know each other. It's going to be a fun battle between these two. Our last round of 16 match, the tennis gods said, hey, neither of you like to play indoors? Fine, we'll have you play one another. As third-seeded Texas A&M takes on San Diego. Now, this A&M team, of course, lost just 2 matches last season. Meanwhile, the San Diego program into the national indoors for the first time in program history. That said, all 6
they've made it before. We just don't know what year.
Yes, exactly. Well said. All that in mind, the San Diego team does have 6 returners it brings back who all have college tennis experience. Now, they get a transfer over from Texas Tech and Kaylee Evans, but she got plenty of reps during her time playing for the Raiders. And I mean, again, they've got not a lot of match indoor chops, but you go beat Georgia Tech, beat Cal on the road. Those are 2 impressive victories to keep your get your season started, even with the losses they've taken against USC and Arizona State. Meanwhile, when this A&M team was forced inside, they struggled against Florida. Earned a 4-2 win in the kickoff weekend, but again, they don't play a ton of indoor tennis. That said, Brandstein, Stoyana, Ewing, Goldsmith, you know what you're getting there. The talented freshmen, Smetnikov, Kupris, where will they be in the lineup? Saying the M team's really good on paper. They've got plenty of experience of their own. They looked fine indoors. Again, yes, their 2 losses last year both happened to come indoors. They were both 4-3 losses. I think this A&M team might have a chip on their shoulder, Jay. I'm very fascinated to see what they bring to this event. What are you looking for most from their lineup here to start?
Well, I'll first say it's a very favorable draw for Texas A&M of any of these teams here that they could have likely faced. I think this one most favors them, right? You're talking about a team that doesn't play indoors at all. This is a San Diego team that's also coming off a loss, right? They just lost to Arizona State 5-2. They're 2-2, right? So yes, they got through that Cal region, but this is a very favorable match for Texas A&M, who, again, they're undefeated, but we still haven't seen them play, top 16 teams. The best match that they've played was that Florida match at the second round of kickoff weekend. I think for Texas A&M, doubles is a strength for them. I think I'm most curious to see 5 and 6. I think we know, what we're going to get from the players you mentioned in Brandstein, Stoyana, Ewing, and JC Goldsmith. I'm curious to see who plays 5 and 6. I think Kupris has, looked okay. coming in as a freshman? Do they play Morales, who had the experience at indoors last year? Do they play Smetnikov, another freshman? I'm curious to see who plays at 5 and 6. And also, it feels like JC Goldsmith only loses for them indoors. So that's something to look for. But overall, I think that this is a really great, I mean, Pepperdine is looking at this being like, why couldn't we get this indoor match first to get some indoor play under our belt before going into the quarterfinals? But so that's how I look at the Texas A&M match.
Yeah. I mean, I think talking to Coach Weaver, I think Cooper's is going to be at 4. I feel pretty confident about that heading into this weekend. Now, will we see Smetnikov, Morales, Pilette? I would lean towards the freshman, who I think Coach Weaver's pretty excited about as well. But again, playing a San Diego team, playing their first match at indoors, that'll be the fascinating thing. Do you turn with a veteran, or is this the opportunity to test one of your younger players? And if they play Evans at 6, that's a really tough first battle for whomever plays there for the Aggies at A&M. Look, for San Diego, I think they need 6. I think they would need Colling at 1 over Brandstein.
Yes.
What's their pathway to 4 points, though, Jay? I think it starts with those two because they've obviously been so good.
I know. I think it's doubles 1, and you would like Desniakov, but that's a tough match if she's playing 2 against Stoyana. So I think it's those. Honestly, give me doubles 1, 5, and 6. Right.
Okay.
I mean, I think Goldsmith has only lost indoors for whatever reason. So I think that that's a match. And if she's at 5, San Diego has to take that match.
And by the way, this is San Diego team that's playing Baylor, Oklahoma. They've already played Arizona State and USC. They scheduled hard this year. They're trying to push themselves to be in top 16 position. And again, to get a look at the best of the best, to be able to compete with them. This is a big moment for a team that's not Power 5. Yes, they're in the Pepperdine Conference. And boy, if they could get one over Pepperdine, then they're definitely in the top 16 conversation. Are you there with them for this matchup? What's your prediction? What's your calculus?
I'm not there with them for this match. I think Texas A&M is the heavy favorite in this match. I think this will be a 4-0 match.
All right. That said, then those are your round of 16 breakdowns, our predictions for how Friday's play unfolds. Of course, we'll have all of it here on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. Now, before I let you go, a couple other things I want to do. First, Diana Schneider. She makes her debut. She's eligible. She will be playing in this 2023 season. 3 sets against Tennessee, but she does ultimately get the victory. Your reaction to all of it?
Well, I'm glad she's eligible. I'm glad she's playing. I'm glad we're no longer in the waiting game. She will not be under the Blaise Bicknell issue of will she, won't she for the entirety of the season. She will no longer be, governed by the Jensen Brooksby rule of, well, he never played a match. Is he really counted as a college tennis player? She's played college tennis, so she is fully immersed in that team. It sounds like we should expect to see her in a portion of their matches this year. I think it's great for college tennis. I think it is great PR for college tennis. I don't, know all of the factors. It's unfortunate for NC State that she wasn't eligible until the week after kickoff. I think that is unfortunate for us as fans, and certainly something that they're, feeling like, why couldn't this have happened a week ago? But look, this certainly changes the calculus for NC State and for a lot of these teams who will have to face NC State.
Yeah, very well said. It's going to be crazy. We have a top 100 player in college tennis. That hasn't happened in a very long time. All right, we talked about the seeding. We should have done this at the start to show the comparison. Let's show our top 10 rankings entering these national indoors because we have now a month of results. Here's where things sit right now. We have North Carolina 1, Texas 2, Stanford 3, Pepperdine 4, A&M 5, Duke 6, Ohio State 7, NC State back up to number 8, Michigan at 9, Virginia at 10. Reaction, Jay?
I have all the same teams with the exception of Georgia in the top 10. I think Georgia's being overly punished for that loss to Columbus, and honestly not rewarded enough for what they did in Chapel Hill. So that's the one team I have in. Other than that, it's directionally very similar in kind of like clumps. I'm not really surprised by any of these.
I very much agree. I have Vanderbilt over Virginia just because they have the NC State win. I think that's a little bit better than anything Virginia's done thus far, but I can't knock you for having Virginia in there. And
I don't have
yeah,
Virginia in there.
yeah, no, I'm saying
Georgia.
no, I'm saying we have Virginia in there. I'm saying more broadly, like I can't knock anyone who puts Virginia in there. So yeah, this feels about right directionally. NC State should be in there, especially now they have Schneider. I have Ohio State a little higher, but not by much. Like, yeah, this feels about right.
I was trying to see how we had Virginia in here, and it's totally Chris's fault.
Yeah, I think Chris has them
He has them
like
like six.
Yeah, and he has that's Chris for you. That's just that's typical Chris Halliers. But that's our top 10. Obviously, we'll see how things shake out. We have Pepperdine 4, North Carolina 1. That's a round of 16 matchup. So buckle your seatbelts, folks. Things are going to get fun. For the record, ITA comes up with a really fun graphic, matches of the week. Let's show that now as we have it. They have TCU Baylor on Wednesday. One we have to circle. Ohio State's going to take on Virginia, by the way, before the National Indoors begins on the men's side. Those are two really fun matches on the women's side. You got the National Indoors, folks. What else can you hope for? Some fun non-D1 matches on the board as well. Tyler versus Colin, Case versus Wayne State. You know, again, those are some really fun matchups across the board. So yeah, buckle your seatbelts, folks. Not only do we have 5 tour level events this week, I think pound for pound, this is where we end our conversation. I think pound for pound, this is the best weekend in the college tennis calendar because you have 3 days consecutively of 8 top 16 battles. Like, it's just, there is a consolation draw. There is no day off. So you lose, you're still in the action. I just think pound for pound, it's the best weekend on the calendar. Jay, what say you?
Yeah, and that consolation round is extremely meaningful, right? You can lose first round and still go 2-1, get 2 top 12, top 10 victories. I mean, those matches are honestly just as good as many of the matches you'll see in the main draw. So yes, the big difference here versus NCAA's is there is this backdraw of very meaningful matches of which teams will care a lot about. So tons of action, and we'll have so many inputs into who's good, who's disappointing, where the ranking's going to fall. Just so much input after indoors.
Yeah, no, very well said. And with all that in mind, folks, we will have coverage first ball to last starting this Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern. And we'll have it all for you. We'll figure out who that national indoor champion will be. Of course, we have more tennis in the immediate future. We've got Baylor TCU, which you see on your screen. We've got that tomorrow for all of you here on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel, 7 p.m. Eastern time start. I believe it's going to be Chris Halliors and Will Blumberg on the call for that one, as I will be on a plane on my way to Seattle. With that in mind, of course, we have moved our men's edition of the Deciding Point to Thursday night. But rest assured, we will still have that show for all of you listeners this week. With all that said, Jay, any final thoughts before we wrap our ITA National Indoor Round of 16 preview episode?
No, I'm looking forward to it. I will see everyone in Seattle.
Well, here's what I'm going to ask you for. No cop-out. Finals champion. Give it to me.
Well, let me scroll back up to my predictions. I thought I had been left on. So here's the thing. I like Texas to get to the semifinals, and I think they will play Duke. I think Duke wins that match, but only because... Sorry, I think Texas wins that match only because Duke has to go through a gauntlet of Oklahoma and either the winner of Stanford, Georgia. They have to play that third day. I think Texas kind of smooths sails through the semifinals, and then I have North Carolina beating Texas in the final.
All right.
Very chalk.
Yeah, you heard it there from Jay. Number 1 versus number 2 in the final. North Carolina capturing a 4th straight. We will find out this weekend whether that comes true or not. With all of that said, for our fantastic co-host, John J. Parsons, our super producer, Daniel Westoff, our friends at Ellesse and SwingVision, and from all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. Jay, what do we tell our listeners?
Hey, great shot.
And we will see you all this weekend. Thanks, everyone.